One of the most popular techniques of psychotherapy today is cognitive behavior therapy. We traveled to Raleigh, North Carolina to speak with Rosario, a therapist who utilizes CBT in much of her work. Let's hear what she has to say about the practical application of CBT in psychotherapy.
I'm Rosario, and I work with Rosario Counseling and Associates in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I primarily use CBT, and I'm here today to talk with you a little bit more in detail about CBT and how to apply that with clients. CBT is really great at its core, and there's something for everyone, whether you have a problem or you're learning about relationships and how to do life. I can't think of too many better ways than to learn how to empathize or to learn certain skills that you adapt through CBT. So I think we have to be delicate about what word choices we use with clients depending on if they're at sensitive areas in their work, or maybe perhaps clients that don't want to accept that there is any wrong going on internally. So I usually start with, when I discuss cognitive distortions, is I break it down that cognitive distortions really just means the lies we believe, and that all of us, men, women, children, we all to some degree lie to ourselves about how we perceive things. And I find that that's a gentler approach than using the term cognitive distortion alone, where people are going to feel like there's a sickness that they have, that their thoughts are distorted. And somehow that could send a message to a client that could disrupt our work. So I have a tendency to try to desensitize it somewhat by letting them know, A, they're common to man, that we all have them, and B, that it really is as simple as that if we were to notice these going on, operating in our life, that we can make easy tweaks and changes that could make our life so much more comfortable and so much more we'll have so much greater of an understanding of what we're doing, or communicating with my other significant other what I'm thinking. I do not think that CBT is a time-limited theory or type of treatment. In fact, I think it's all about looking at a person's core beliefs, looking at their mistaken beliefs, and being able to recognize how those oftentimes have affected a person. So anytime you're having to look at the cognitions of a person and break that down, that takes time to be able to help them to establish their confidence again, their worth again, because frequently they continue to have the same default thinking if you don't work with their thought process, not just as an example of one instance where they had a problem with the thought process, but you have to go to the core of the problem and recognizing that there is diminished capacity to deal with life through having ineffective thoughts. So in no way do I think that. But, in terms of the therapies that I use, I do have a tendency to utilize a variety of different therapies. So I do enjoy CBT, but you'll see I still have some of the older RET, or you'll see that I use problem-focused therapy, or you'll see I use the ACT. I find that I use what I find is going to be most effective to problem solve what a client needs. And that oftentimes can be CBT and is usually my primary and foundational, but I might use DBT along with it. But CBT and DBT can overlap. What I like about DBT is I like using the self-soothing, the distress tolerance skills. So there are certain aspects that I'll incorporate without having to use the entire one therapy only. What I like to do is create notebooks in each of the areas that I work with people. So I have a notebook, for example, on anxiety, a notebook on depression, and so on and so forth. But one of the notebooks that I have is actually just of CBT tools. And interestingly enough, I have a client who took all of the CBT tools that I had taught her and she put them into an Excel spreadsheet. This was an executive who no longer works and decided that she would take these tools that she had learned and she would create, were they useful for her? Were they top techniques? Which ones are the top ones that are her go-tos first? And then did she apply them or not? But techniques that I had taught her, whether it was about biofeedback or using a GSR machine where she could measure her galvanic skin response, or whether it was something as easy and helpful as deep breathing. But she listed all the techniques I'd ever taught her, whether they were CBT or otherwise, resetting expectations, for example. And then what she did is she made notes, how they were useful or helpful to her, and different comments that she had about them. So she literally has, and I've kept this because it's so interesting, but I literally have a condensed 5-page handout Excel on all the different effective tools that I had trained her with. And that patient I'd worked with for 2 years. Handouts that I might use with clients, the poison parrot is one that I find is helpful because, once again, it addresses those faulty ideas that people hold about themselves. So I have a handout here, and what I'll do is at the beginning of the session, I am opening them up for a person to tell me a little bit about what's on their mind that day, and as it relates to the therapeutic goals that they may have set for themselves. And I'm listening for where their challenges are. And as soon as I hear that there's a tool that I have that can help them with that challenge, I am automatically thinking about what skill or resource to share with them. And then I will grab those out. But I have the 50 ways to untwist your thinking, and which are very helpful. I have the old ABCDE model of thinking, and I will literally, depending on the person, pull out different handouts that work on your core beliefs, because it depends on what skill I think that will be easiest for that person to grasp and how effective that will be. But I literally will use handouts as a tool in therapy that we are going through this, talking through it, and I'm practicing it with them so that they can use it on their own. I think as a therapist, we are so much more aware of our own cognitive distortions. And I don't fit just in one. I have several that I have to be aware of. And perhaps, a cognitive distortion that I might have is fortune telling, perceiving I can read someone's mind and think that I know what they're thinking or doing. And in therapy, you have to be cautious that you're not making false assumptions. So what I've learned to do is to do clarification and perception checks, where I'm checking in with if I am perceiving something correctly or not. So clients know when you work with me that you're going to work with somebody straightforward, because I'm not going to hold back what I'm thinking. I'm more so going to check in with you. And there's something very safe about that for clients, that they feel as though they're not worried about that I'm in somehow withholding something from them, because I do come across as open and intentional. And when I have a thought or a question that it's not lining up or syncing up, I'm going to ask that. So with that, I think comes relaxation. I think CBT, I think there's probably few therapists that really are purists anymore. I think when we were talking about the 50s, there might have been people that aligned with a particular, with Skinner and were behaviorists or whatnot. I really do believe that now, as therapists have learned so much more, and as we have so many great resources that are available to us through internet where we can read more on different theories, I think we found that using the best of what each has to offer, or the best of what several of them have to offer, and incorporate that in working with clients, is usually the most effective treatment for clients. So I myself, find myself, integrating a lot of different theories and using them together to create this healing process in my client.